everyone, my name is Braylee and welcome to The Labyrinth. This is my first YouTube video, and what I've been wanting to do is review books while I do my makeup, so if you're interested in that, then stick around and see what I have to say, I guess. I just wanted to say a few things before we get started. First of all, I will be giving a summary of whatever book I read, so if you don't want any spoilers, then I guess go read the book and then come back and watch this video if you still want to. Second of all of my opinions are my own, so if I critique anything, if I say anything negative about this book, that doesn't mean that it takes away from your enjoyment of the book. It's just my personal opinion and what I think when I read these books. And if you like this book, that is okay. We are all entitled to like different things, and me saying something negative about a book does not mean that you can't enjoy it. Just wanted to get those out of the way. The book I'm going to be talking about today is Hush Hush by Becca Fitzpatrick. This book was published in 2009. You can tell because it still has a border sticker on it. Remember borders? So when I read this book, I was 14 in 2009. So I was a freshman in high school. I reread it recently because I hadn't read it in a long time, and this book particularly kind of sparked this whole idea I had of reviewing books on YouTube, because I'm not a fan of it. Let me read you the back of the book, the little synopsis that's back here, before we get into the makeup and the review. A sacred oath, a fallen angel, a forbidden love. When Nora and Patch are forced together as lab partners, Nora would rather fall to her death than put up with his elusive answers to her questions, his teasing, and his infuriatingly handsome face and hypnotizing eyes. It seems Patch was put on Earth just to drive her crazy. But before long, Nora's defenses start to break down as her curiosity about Patch heats up. Why does he always seem to be wherever she is and know exactly what she's thinking? How does he know what to say to both attract and repulse her? And what is up with those V-shaped scars on his chiseled back? As their connection grows stronger, Nora's own life becomes increasingly fragile. Nora needs to decide, is Patch the one who wants to do her harm, or the one who will keep her safe? Has she fallen for one of the fallen? Dun dun dun! Reading that out loud just makes me realize how kind of cringy a lot of this stuff is. At least nowadays, like I always have to put a grain of salt in there, just like it was 2009, it was a different time, book-wise. This was very normal and accepted at the time, but we'll get into that. So I've already primed my face off camera because, who wants to watch someone put primer on their face? So I'm going to try and give a quick summary while I put my foundation on. If anyone wants me to link what products I use in the description, I can do that. I just don't think it's necessary because I just mostly use drugstore products, and also I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a makeup artist. I just do makeup for fun. If you want to take instruction from me, that's cool, but just a disclaimer, I don't know what I'm doing, so don't come for me if my foundation or anything doesn't match. Anyway, let's start with the summary. As the back of the book said, Nora is our main character. Patch is the other main character / love interest / possible antagonist. So basically, what happens is Patch is a fallen angel, and Nora is the descendant of a Nephilim, which is a child born of a human and an angel. Patch wants to become human, and the only way that he can do that is to kill the descendant of a Nephilim and use their sacrifice to turn himself human. Someone is trying to kill Nora before Patch can kill her, basically, as revenge so that Patch can't become human like he wants to be. That person is Chauncey / Jules. Chauncey, he is the Nephilim that Nora is descended from, and 2 weeks out of the year, Patch is able to take over Chauncey's body and control him for 2 weeks so that he can feel human for those 2 weeks. This deal was made, forcibly made to Chauncey back in 1565. Because he's a Nephilim, he's immortal. So Chauncey is trying to get revenge for being taken over 2 weeks out of the year. Patch is trying to kill Nora so he can become human. However, he starts falling for her because, of course, So he doesn't want her to die anymore, even though he's almost killed her quite a few times, and then erased her memory of it, basically. So, in the end, it gets to a point where Nora sacrifices herself so that Patch can become human, and in doing so, Patch ends up rejecting her sacrifice so that she can live instead. When he does that, he becomes a guardian angel because he technically saves her life by rejecting her sacrifice. Why that's a thing, I don't really know. Especially because he specifically becomes her guardian angel, which is okay, I guess, because he saved her life. But then he becomes her guardian angel and they start dating. What? Chauncey ends up dead because he died when she did or something. I don't really understand why he died. But he doesn't come back because he doesn't have a soul to be able to return to his body. He's dead. Nora is safe. Patch doesn't want to kill her anymore because he loves her. And Nora no longer has a stalker trying to kill her, which was Patch and Jules, basically. And she ends up falling for Patch as well, so they start dating. And happy ever after. I'm just kidding. There's a second book, but we're not getting into that. I have some notes written down of things that I liked and did not like about this book. I'll go with what I liked first because that list is a lot shorter. First thing that I did enjoy about the book is the opening paragraph in chapter 1. It has a very good hook and it has a good attention grabber at the very beginning, which is what you want in a book, something that makes you interested in wanting to read more. And I thought she did a good job of doing that in the first chapter. There is a prologue, however, but we'll get into that in the negative column. Please ignore how crazy I look while I read you the first paragraph. I walked into biology and my jaw fell open. Mysteriously adhered to the chalkboard was a Barbie doll with Ken at her side. They'd been forced to link arms and were naked except for artificial leaves placed in a few choice locations. Scribbled above their heads in thick pink chalk was the invitation. Welcome to human reproduction. Sex. The reason why I think that is a good attention grabber is the first sentence where it says she walks into her class and her jaw falls open. Well, your first thought is, well, why did that happen? Which makes you want to read the next sentence so you understand why her jaw fell open. And then when you read the next sentence, you discover that there are 2 Barbie dolls taped to the chalkboard, and they look like Adam and Eve with leaves placed over them. And at the end of the first paragraph, you understand that the reason they are taped to the board is because they are learning about human reproduction. So as a first paragraph, it is definitely good enough to grab your attention and make you want to read more. Not the best, obviously. I think I've read better opening first sentences even, but for the most part, it still grabs your attention and makes you want to know what's going on. The second thing that is a positive for this book is that the lore or world building is fairly consistent. She did her research on different, biblical aspects. She is also very consistent within the powers of said creatures, fallen angels. The fact that they can't feel, that they can manipulate people's minds. We see that happens to Nora consistently throughout the book by multiple fallen angels or Nephilim, as Chauncey is a Nephilim. The reason why Patch would want to become human is because the fallen angels can't physically feel anything. So they can't feel cold, warm, they can't feel touch, anything like that. So that's why they go into the Nephilim body 2 weeks out of the year, which is the month that there are no Jewish holidays, I think, is what the book says. Not sure how accurate that is. I'm not Jewish. I wouldn't know. But I think Patch's reasoning for wanting to become human is realistic. The fact that he is walking around unable to feel anything would probably drive some people kind of crazy, especially since he's apparently been around since 1565. I think she did a good job of consistently having people's motivations and everything consistent. And speaking of the powers of being able to manipulate people's minds, I thought these scenes where different things happen to Nora, where there's an incident where she gets into a car crash, she runs into someone in her friend's car, driving alone at night on her way home. This person, smashes into the windshield in the car and everything, but then gets up completely fine and starts to try and bend her driver's door off and smash the window in to get to her. So she freaks out and drives off and drives back to her friend's house to stay the night because she is obviously freaked out. By the time she gets there and goes up into her friend's house so that her friend can see the damage to her car, they go back outside and suddenly the car is fixed except for a tiny crack on the windshield. Nora's memory starts to fade of the incident of, well, this is what really happened, but did it actually happen? So the different scenarios like that are interesting to read because it makes you want to know why these things are happening. We clearly just read that something happened to her, but why is she now suddenly forgetting that it's happening? What's going on? So it makes you interested to try and figure out what is happening to her, as well as the stalking and everything else that's going on, and how Patch is, her main suspect, basically, for a while. Another thing that I thought was well done is the author is good at establishing the setting. We start off in the prologue, we are in France in 1565, and it's really short, so there's not much scene setting going on there, but it's raining, they're in a cemetery, creepy. In the present day book with Nora, they are in Coldwater, Maine, in present day, which is 2009 at this point. She does a good job at setting the different scenes of what happens. A lot of scenes take place at night, which obviously adds an air of creepiness to everything. There's a lot of rain and fog that helps set the scene so that everything just seems really eerie. I mean, it's normal weather, but if you have a stalker who jumps out in front of your car or tries to kill you on a roller coaster or something like that, having it at night and having different elemental factors like fog amps up the creepiness. And it's true to location. Definitely not be the same if they were in Florida or California, because the weather is just not like that in those places. She did a good job at consistently setting the atmosphere of each of the scenes in the book. And my last positive note, told you this list was short, is Nora is a very active character instead of reactive. So what that means is you want your characters to be able to push the story forward themselves. You want them to make decisions that set the ball rolling and continue the rest of the story instead of the story happening to them and them just reacting to what is going on. For example, Nora wants to find out more about Patch. She starts to go undercover a little bit and disguise herself so she can go into his work to find out more about him and have no one recognize her. Now, if this were a reactive situation, she wouldn't have gone there specifically to find out more. She would have just been there at this restaurant that he works at and probably would have just had someone tell her for some reason who Patch is as a person type thing. But instead, she's a very active character, so she is setting the pace of how she wants things to happen and is putting herself through the story instead of having other people make things happen for her, because that also pushes forward for character growth. If they're just sitting there and things are happening to them, then they're not growing or changing, they're just reacting to things that are happening to them. But if they're the ones making the decisions, then those decisions and the subsequent consequences, if there are any, will help them change and grow as a person and as a character. Tip for anyone who likes to write and stuff like that: make sure you don't just make your characters sit around and wait for things to happen to them. Make them charge forward and take charge of their own story and destiny. Da-da-da, the more you know. Sorry about the cut. I had to do my contour and blush off camera because I realized I was already on the negative column and I hadn't even started my eyes yet. Side note, I'm going to be doing my makeup themed after whatever the book cover looks like, the story, that kind of thing. And since it looks like this, with all the black and gray, and there's like a little bit of red in there, I'm going to be theming it after that, in case you're wondering what I was going for. So now into the negative column. I also apologize if you like this book, but like I said, it's just my opinion. Like I said before, there's a prologue. I don't think it did a good job, if I'm being honest. The first sentence and opening paragraph aren't very interesting. They don't really do much to make you want to read more, in my own opinion. All it is just Chauncey sitting in a field when it's raining, thinking about how he has to walk home because he let his horse wander in a field. And apparently he was with some girl, farmer girl. I don't know. It's supposed to, I think what she was trying to go for was that it's supposed to grab your attention because it's 1565 in France, but I thought this was a modern book. Why is it starting off in 1565 in France? It just didn't do it for me at all. When I was rereading it a few weeks ago, when I picked it up a few weeks ago, I didn't realize there was even a prologue. I accidentally skipped it, finding to get to the first chapter, because I just moved some pages out of the way. So I didn't even realize there was a prologue until I went back to write notes for this video. And I read the prologue and I was like, oh, I mean, honestly, the book was just fine without it. The only thing the prologue really does is establishes who Patch is at the beginning, because, it's obvious who Patch is. He's, in the beginning, in the prologue, he's this boy with V-shaped scars on his back who forces this deal on Chauncey or whatever. Obviously it's supposed to be Patch, and then it establishes who Chauncey is and why he wants revenge, basically. But you get that information from the rest of the book, so I don't think the prologue was necessary. Because there's one point in the book where Patch is talking to another Nephilim friend. It's in a memory or something. Nora touches the scars on his back and is able to see his memories for some reason. He's talking to another Nephilim about how Chauncey is always angry that they have to take over his body, why they take over his body and everything. So they explain it again in the book later on. So when I reread it, I just figured out, I was like, oh, okay, it's this Chauncey person, whatever. And all the prologue does is just introduce you to him earlier, but with everything that happens in the book, you don't really even need the prologue to set up everything. That's why I said that the first chapter has a good hook, but the prologue does not. I just think the book would have been better off starting with the first chapter, to be honest, because it starts you right into the setting that we're going to be in for the rest of the book. To me, it's just more interesting starting off with her walking into a science class and seeing two Barbies taped to the chalkboard instead of some random dude in France just sitting in the rain thinking about how he has to walk home. Another thing that I had trouble with when I was reading this, and while the author does show settings and everything very well, she doesn't show characters very well, in my own opinion. Because at the beginning, she does a lot of telling about Nora and not really showing any of it. There's this scene in the biology class when Patch is switched to be her biology partner, and they have to find out more about each other. He is just throwing out all these things about things she likes. So she likes classical music, she plays the cello, she likes Baroque music, whatever. And in her mind, she's just like, how does he know these things? I've never spoken to him before. My issue with that, not the fact that he guessed what she liked. I mean, he knew because he could read her mind or whatever. You don't know that at this point. It's in the very beginning. But my problem with it is that we never see her do any of these things. We never see her play the cello. We never see her listen to classical music. So all it is just characterizing her without showing who she is. It's just like, oh, she's this person. And it just doesn't work for me. And there's other instances like that too. I mean, she kind of does the same characterization with Nora's best friend V. That's another point I'll get into. I would have preferred if there had been a scene like later that night. So earlier in the class, she doesn't get any answers from Patch for her assignment, and she refuses to call him, at the time anyway, to finish the assignment. And I think I would have preferred some kind of scene of her getting home and, being like, today's kind of sucked. I'm going to sit down and listen to some music to calm me down, while I do my homework or something. And so she turns on her, and so that she won't have to think about Patch. So she turns on her music, and it's fine for a second, but then she remembers back to the classroom of how he guessed her favorite music, and that she likes Control and, all the, irritating things he said about her. and then in doing so, it makes her think back about Patch, which makes her angry. So she shuts the music off, like, oh, I can't believe he guessed that right, or something like that. A scene like that would have been much more impactful to show Nora as a person, instead of just Patch telling us she likes these things, and then we never see her listen or do any of those things for the entire book. Ooh, looking crazy over here. My third point that I had is about V. So I brought her up. She is Nora's best friend. She is the typical character, best friend character who's like the sassy one, the one who likes food, who's obsessed with boys, all that kind of stuff, whereas Nora's level-headed, academically superior. Superior is not really the right word. More academically inclined, I should say. But while V does support Nora when she's feeling in trouble and stuff, there's at one point where Nora notices someone is following her when her and V are out shopping, and so V offers to switch places with her to see if they can catch who it is, and gets attacked for it. So, obviously, like, good friend there. Obviously, no one would want their best friend to get attacked, but the fact that she offered and was willing to do that to protect Nora is, good characterization. But at the same time, she does a lot of things that she doesn't tend to listen to Nora about other things that she is worried about. There's one point where this character, Elliot, comes into the picture. He is like the red herring of the book. So Nora finds out that he is a suspect in his ex-girlfriend's murder case. And so she is obviously kind of freaked out. And the fact that he, sees her looking at this article that she found and starts to just act even more creepy towards her, is really freaking her out. So she tries to confide in V about it, and V is just like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, I think it's Patch. Like, Elliot's fine. You just need to let go a little. Just live. Come on. Nah, nah, nah. If I had told my friend, or here, let's switch this around. If my friend had told me that a guy we were talking to was a suspect of a murder for his ex-girlfriend, and it was even said that he was seen with her the night before she was found dead, I wouldn't just dismiss everything she was saying. I would, I'd probably be like, hey, maybe we shouldn't talk to him, actually. That sounds like a good idea to me. I think it's to do with her, like, boy craziness of she just wants Nora to, like, let go and stuff, but I don't think having her just kind of ignore Nora's worries of Elliot might be her stalker is a good characterization. Especially because it's at the end, the reason Nora ends up in the final situation to begin with is because V goes to hang out with Elliot and Jules and break into the school for fun. Nora goes to the school because she's trying to rescue V. And it's not until that situation happens, when V is basically kidnapped at this point, to get to Nora, that she realizes, hey, I was wrong. Maybe I should have listened to Nora. So to me, she just seems really one-dimensional, and it's not even like a good character growth, in my opinion. The only reason she goes back on what she says is because Nora was right to begin with, and she ended up getting kidnapped to lure Nora in, and then it's only then that she's like, oh, sorry, I guess you're right. It wasn't a growth of, like, actually realizing what is going on with Nora or anything like that, or even trying to be, like, supportive in what she thinks is happening to her, deciding, oh wait, I was being kind of, a jerk by not listening to my friend when she's having these very real worries about someone following her, especially because I was attacked. So I think she could have been made a better character. Like, she could have still been, the one to lure Nora to the school at the end for when everything happens. But I just feel like, leaving off of her character development till the end, when she is in a situation where she is proven wrong at the last minute, and is only then sorry. It just doesn't really sit right with me. Now we're going to get into my fourth point, which is probably one of my biggest complaints about this whole story. Patch sucks. He is a huge dick. Like, all he does is antagonize Nora, like, the whole book, and then expects her to, like, fall for him at the end because he's like, oh, well, I decided not to kill you, so, I mean, because I, like, fell for you, or whatever. Like, there's a lot to unpack within that. So let's get started. So at the beginning, basically, when they're assigned to be lab partners, he is elusive. He doesn't answer any of her questions. He is kind of like making fun of her the entire time, especially when he starts to say everything that she likes and is just like basically telling her she's basic and boring and lame. Like, the whole time, she's just like, wow, this dude is so fucking rude. Why? I don't understand. I've never spoken to him before. Why is he treating me like this? I didn't want to be partners, but we were forced to, so that's the only reason why I'm, like, even talking to you right now, you know? And he's just being a huge dick about it. I mean, we find out that he's the one who planted the idea in their teacher's mind, because he was using it to get closer to Nora and everything, so that he could kill her. Like boys do. I'm assuming his thought process was, if I act all mysterious, she'll want to get to know me more. Gross. He also just seems to push her boundaries out of the way. There's multiple points where she's, like, clearly uncomfortable with things that he's doing, like being too close to her and everything like that, and he continues to do them anyway because he's trying to lure her in. I don't fucking know. Just rereading it again, it's like very toxic behavior. If anyone ever does that to you, fucking run, please. Get away from them. They're not someone you need to be around at all. Because along those lines, the whole time, you know, Nora is just like, oh, well, I mean, he's rude, and I think, you know, he kind of treats me like shit. I think he's stalking me. You know, that's another big one. She's also, at the same time, kind of like, but he's so attractive. You think someone is stalking you, but you're, like, just hung up on how attractive they are? Is it just me? Or if I thought someone was stalking me and they happened to be, like, conventionally attractive, I wouldn't think they were attractive in any way. And, like, am I just crazy? I think someone who's stalking me and may want to do me harm is not attractive? Am I the only one? Please tell me I'm not the only one. Because they just have, like, you know, Nora and Patch have no chemistry at all. The only thing that is considered chemistry is her reaction to him being so rude to her, and her just being like, well, I'm going to prove him wrong. Also, he's kind of hot. And that's it. There's really no point until, I guess, the very end, where she's just like, I feel safe around him. The whole time, the whole book, she goes back and forth on whether or not he's actually her stalker. Like, every time she's like, oh, well, I don't think it's him. Something happens, and she immediately switches back to, oh, no, he is my stalker, and he's trying to hurt me. Why would you want to be with someone who makes you change your mind that quickly to think that they're going to harm you, that they're going to kill you, which he is trying to do for, you know, most of the book? At this point, if you're ever in a situation where you think someone who is pursuing you is also, like, romantically pursuing you, not physically, but also possibly stalking you, don't just think that they're attractive. How about you, I don't know, try and stay away from them? Because the thing, too, is that the whole, like, what happens throughout the whole book is that he always ends up in places that she seems to be, and she's just like, is he actually following me? Or is it just all a coincidence or something? No, he's literally following you around, and now all of a sudden it's, like, kind of hot just because he says that he's attracted to you and that you have curvy lips. That was actually a description, he said. I wanted to throw up when I read that out. It was so disgusting. What the fuck does curvy lips mean? Do they just, like, near, like, does it make, like, the McDonald's M shape? Just like, so curvy. Ew. Don't give that. Because that's also, like, it kind of moves into my next point of Nora is so inconsistent with her feelings towards Patch, because half the time she thinks he's stalking her, and then the other half, all she does is think that he's hot. To me, that doesn't sound right at all. Why would any sane person would think that someone who is super rude and possibly stalking them? Because the thing is, this came out in 2009, so this is like big in the Twilight era of, which is a whole nother beast of why those books are awful. So this was that like a period of time where people were like, oh my god, he like watches me in his sleep, that's so attractive. Like, oh my god, he like follows me because he wants to make sure that I'm safe or something. Like, oh my god, that's like so hot. No, it's not. It's not. It's toxic, it's disgusting, it's terrifying, and the fact that books like these, with these kinds of mindsets, is incredibly disturbing. Why do you think it's attractive that someone's following you around? It's not. Just having these books set these, an example of like, this is a healthy relationship. No, it's not. It's not. You shouldn't ever be with someone who basically just insults you and takes up your personal space and forcibly pushes you out of your comfort zone when you don't want to. Little things like that. Not attractive, not healthy in any way whatsoever. That is also kind of abusive. You don't ever want to be with someone who all they do is just talk shit about you to your face. But maybe that's just me. I don't know. Maybe I'm the crazy one. Another side note that I realized when I was rereading again for my notes and stuff. Nora is in 10th grade. So she is 15/16 at most. And Patch is supposed to be like a senior. She's a child. Like, I think back. So when I was in 10th grade, I was 15 because I was on the younger end of the spectrum. My birthday's in the summer, so I was always one of the youngest people in the class. So I was 15 in 10th grade, and if she has her birthday in the school year, then at most she's 16. But she is like an actual child still. And as much as most of us when we were teenagers thought we were so grown up at 16, no, you're not. Like, you're still a child. You still live with your parents. So I'm assuming, I guess she's 16 because she can drive. He's supposed to be this immortal being, fallen angel dude, and he like falls for a 16-year-old and he's also hundreds of years old. Why does no one think that's creepy? Besides the fact that he's such an asshole to her the whole time and, following her around and everything. The fact that he thinks that she's even remotely attractive as a child, a 16-year-old child, that's really fucking gross. Let's move on. So the other thing that I had a big problem with, specifically with Patch, is when he's just like, oh, I was gonna kill you, but then I fell for you, so not gonna kill you anymore. And that doesn't raise any red flags for Nora. Like, she had this whole suspicion of being stalked and also multiple near-death experiences. One specifically with Patch where she's on a roller coaster and she is falling off to her death, and then he just fixes it because he changes his mind for some reason and makes her forget it and all that stuff. If someone told me that they were planning on murdering me, sacrifice and fallen angels and being, wanting to become human and all that, mythical shit aside, if someone told me that they were planning on murdering me, but then they changed their mind because they fell for me instead. Run! No. Not gonna fly. Not gonna cut it. No thank you. That is so disturbing. I don't understand why she is just like, okay, cool. I guess I like you too, even though you were trying to murder me. Again, this all just kind of falls back into that umbrella of toxic, unhealthy relationships. Basically also how Nora, as a 16-year-old, is so impressionable and manipulated. She's not terrified. She is terrified, but then at the same time, she still thinks that that's okay based off of, things like V said to her before. There was a point where, in the beginning, V was just like, I think he's so hot because he's a little bit dangerous. Like, you never know what he's done in his past. Like, what if he, kidnaps someone or, like, stalks someone? Like, she's, like, making a joke out of Nora not feeling safe and feeling uncomfortable around him. And she's just, like, setting this idea in her mind of, like, but it's fine because it's kind of hot. That's what happens when you date a bad boy. They make you feel uncomfortable and unsafe sometimes, but it's just adds to their attractiveness. No. That's a big no from me. Sorry, not buying it. So it just is it's really gross to read as an adult now and realize that I read this when I was 14. And at the time, I agreed with her. I was like, oh my god, he's so hot. Wow, he doesn't want to kill her? Oh, he's so sweet. Wow, the bar is like below the floor for men at this point. Like, it's ridiculous. So I'm going to say this. To those of you who are young, I am 25, so I have grown up some. To those of you who are just entering adulthood, 18, 19, those of you who are still in high school or even younger, if you're watching this, raise your standards. Please. Do not settle for someone who treats you like garbage, who makes you uncomfortable, and also, if it gets to the extremes of where you think someone is stalking you or anything like that, don't think that that's acceptable in any way, because it's not. You deserve better. You deserve to be treated with respect, and don't let anyone else tell you that you shouldn't. Okay? Okay? Alright. Let's get to the next thing. Rant over. Well, I'm still ranting. Sorry. For my next point, there is a character named Marcy Miller in the book. She is the stereotypical, like, high school bully. She is in the same grade as Nora and V, and she's a cheerleader. Oh my god, how original. She's, like, skinny, and V is not. Nora describes V as curvy. That could mean a whole lot of things. Basically, Marcy's role, the entire book, is to just degrade them for being different, I guess. And she just, like, makes fun of V all the time for having more fat on her body, kind of thing. My main issue with this is that she's there to kind of set the example of, I'm not like other girls. Nora is not like Marcy because she's nicer. She doesn't put as much makeup on her face. Like, she put half a bottle of foundation on her face. Oh my god, she's so fake. In 2009, that whole situation was prevalent in society of just like, I'm not like other girls. I don't wear makeup. I only hang out with boys. Like, all that shit. And it's really damaging to girls to pit them against each other all the time for just liking different things. Clearly this happens still. Like, there's still people who think like this. But it's getting better, in my opinion. More girls are not purposely trying to differentiate themselves from other women. It's more so like, oh my god, she likes that? I mean, I'm not a fan of that, but that's cool, you do you. I like this kind of thing. It's more so just like trying to raise each other up instead of tear each other down. So I think that's Marcy's entire role, is just to be the other type of girl in this school, that it's supposed to be the norm, and how Nora is, like, so different from it. It doesn't sit right with me. Especially because, like, there's one point where V is in the hospital after getting attacked, because they were trying to find out who was stalking Nora and everything. Nora runs into Marcy in the library. Marcy is just being, like, an asshole, saying, like, oh, I bet she'll lose a few pounds by not being able to eat in the hospital or something, like, something shitty. On top of that, like, really pisses Nora off, so she starts insulting, like, they do, like, a little, like, back and forth insulting of just like skank, slut, like those kinds of things, which are also problematic. And then at the end of those little insults or whatever, Nora calls Marcy an anorexic pig. To which then Marcy responds, well, at least I know how to control myself from what I eat or something. Which the whole thing is just gross. Like, first of all, you don't just like bring up someone's eating disorder as an insult because eating disorders are incredibly dangerous, and obviously they shouldn't be glorified either because, Marcy's reaction to it is just like, well, at least I know how to control my eating, which she doesn't. So the fact that Nora just decides to bring up an eating disorder as an insult to her because, she's making fun of her friend who's in the hospital, but you're just an asshole for using someone's eating disorder to shame them and insult them. Like, it's incredibly, incredibly difficult to even come to terms with realizing that you have one, because, it takes a lot for people to realize that something is wrong, and usually it takes other people around them to let them know that something is wrong. It's just really disturbing that this was the mindset of the time, and I don't even know specifically what the author thinks. But it's one of those things of, obviously not everything that the author puts in the book is something that they abide by and everything. Like, just because someone writes about a war and everything doesn't mean they're actually pro-war. You need conflict, you need strife to be able to make your characters grow. But at the same time, having Nora use that as an insult doesn't make me think well of the author. That whole situation rubbed me the wrong way. And I think Marcy, just as a character, isn't needed in the whole book. They're barely at school. The only time we see them at school is when they're in biology class. And then we only get, a couple interactions with Marcy. And they don't add anything to the story. The only reason that she's really in there is to show the difference of Nora and the typical popular normal girl, Marcy. And that comparison doesn't even need to be made. Because clearly Patch is not going after Marcy or anything, he's not interested in her in any way whatsoever. Usually if it's oh, I'm not like other girls, usually there's a worry that the main love interest, the guy, is, usually the guy at this point in time, is going to somehow fall for the other girl who is the normal, popular one type of thing. But that situation isn't even relevant to the entire story. So having her in there doesn't add anything, and it just makes it kind of gross, honestly. I didn't like her, obviously, because you're not supposed to, but their interactions didn't make me really like Nora and V either. Whole situation just didn't really fit with me. My next point has to do with the ending and the logistics. So when Patch gives up his sacrifice so that Nora can live, he becomes a guardian angel. And he specifically becomes Nora's guardian angel, but he's still allowed to date her as her guardian angel. It doesn't make sense because the reason he fell is because he wanted to, be with humans and stuff. Why can he become a guardian angel and yet still continue to date Nora when that was what made him become a fallen angel in the first place? It doesn't make any sense. I don't get it. So for my last point, it's the whole Jules is Chauncey scenario. Jules is the best friend of Elliot, who is the red herring of the story. So this whole time, Nora is thinking that maybe it's actually Elliot behind it because he was suspected of murdering his ex-girlfriend and everything. And Jules is just in the background, kind of oh yeah, this is Jules. He kind of hates everything and doesn't interact with other people. And come to find out that he was the one pulling the strings the whole time of trying to get to Nora and kill her so that Patch wouldn't be able to become human. And my whole problem with that is that it's kind of comes from out of nowhere, in my opinion. There's little things here and there that kind of do set the stage of oh, Patch somehow shows up or is there, so, oh, Jules went to the bathroom for a while or something. His stomach wasn't feeling good or anything like that. But otherwise, he's never in the story, and to have him be Chauncey just doesn't pay off well. There's no other hints as to him being Chauncey than the fact that he just mysteriously disappears when Patch shows up because he doesn't want to be seen. That's it. If there had been other hints to it, that would have been nice. It would have definitely, I think, paid off more for me. But like Nora just barely interacts with him at all. All she sees is that he's like kind of sullen and doesn't talk a lot or whatever. But other than that, she has no interactions with him because, I mean, she's supposed to be thrown off by Elliot, and he's the one who starts acting creepy and everything. But I think we should have gotten more from Jules/Chauncey. It's supposed to be, for the most part, like a surprise that, oh no, Jules is actually Chauncey and everything. I think it would have been better if there had been even some other hint that it was him. To finish what I was saying, I think it would have been better if there had been more hints toward Jules being Chauncey. Something he said, something he did, something that seemed just like weird behavior other than the fact that he would just disappear when Patch was around, that kind of thing. I think it would have been more effective of an ending, because at the moment it just feels like a plot twist, you know, like, oh no, dun dun dun, it was Jules all along, there weren't really any hints to it, how shocking. In conclusion, I did not like this book upon rereading it. There is a lot of gross behavior, toxic behavior. The relationship between Nora and Patch is incredibly unhealthy and toxic, not to mention pedophilic, essentially, because he's an immortal and she's 16 at the oldest. She's in 10th grade. A lot of the characters just didn't really work for me. They were very one-dimensional, a lot of them. I did not enjoy rereading it. It made me cringe a lot. It made me roll my eyes a lot. Given the chance, I wouldn't reread it again. So that is my review. Should I do a rating scale of like out of 5 stars or something like that? I'll give it a 2 at most, I guess, because there are some decent things in here that the author was good at, but overall not very enjoyable. This is also the finished makeup look. I had to do some stuff off camera so that I could be done with my makeup by the time I was done talking. So turned out pretty okay, I guess. I actually kind of like it. So I might have to do this look again. I hope you enjoyed the review. Sorry if I got a bit rambly and ranty at times, but there were some things that I had issues with that I felt I needed to explain more. So hopefully you didn't mind that. Another thing, so I am currently reading, as of filming this video, I am currently reading this book over on my Twitch account, twitch.tv/Braylee's Labyrinth, the same as my YouTube name. If you want to see a real-time reaction, at least either live or in the VOD of me reading this book live, then hop on over there and you can check it out. If there's any books that you would want me to read and review, leave them down below. I can't guarantee that I'll get to them because I have a lot of books that I want to review that I have read over the years, a lot over the years. So I'll probably do those first, but if you suggest any that I've already read, then for sure I'll get to them at some point. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, Twitter, those places, I'll have all those linked down below. Subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I am hoping that this will be more my main content. I don't know if I'm planning on doing anything else on this channel. So far it's just this of makeup and books type of thing. But if you want to see me do anything else, let me know, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!